What up, gang, gang? What's good, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Door podcast with Jeremy Hills and Brandon Brown. Excited to be here and getting into some more topics. You know, hopefully that means something and matter to you and resonate with you. And still like a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, man. I feel like we always have a lot of stuff to talk about, but you know, we just entered the month of February, and one thing that's been on my mind a lot is we just got out of the holiday season. I don't know if Valentine's Day is considered part of the holiday season, but you know, we just finished our stretch of like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. My daughter turned one, which should be a national holiday. We'll talk about that later. But like, it became really apparent to me this year that like, I don't really care about holidays, man. You know, and it kind of makes me sad. And I've had some people talk to me about it. Like, how come you don't get into the spirit? Like, I didn't have a Christmas tree at my house this year. I didn't have any Christmas lights up. I just get really stressed around the holidays. And I think, we were talking about this, and I've talked about this with a lot of people. Like, that's a real thing for people who have been to prison, is how time just like blends together, and, every day is the same regardless of what the actual date is. And so I think it's just something we're talking about to give, people who are listening, I guess, an understanding. Number one, to think about themselves if you've been incarcerated for any period of time and like missed some holidays because you were in a jail cell or a prison cell, but also like maybe give some insights for people who just have loved ones and they're wondering like, man, why doesn't this person get excited about Christmas? So I guess, tossing to you, Jeremy, like, what was your experience over the years, that you were in the system? And then now, because you've been out for a pretty significant amount of time, like, did you see that in yourself? Like, just this, like, kind of blah, gray feeling about the holidays? And do you still feel that way many years later?
It's I do actually. I mean, when you're incarcerated, you try to act like it's not happening, right? Or that's how I try to do my time. Like the holidays came up, and it was always a very tense time in the system, and like even in the community. I think the holidays are tough in general for a lot of people, and just the grief and loss that people have experienced in their lives, or it almost magnifies family and stuff, and it's the time of year that we kind of reflect on our family and things that we have, and those types of things. And when you feel completely alone and isolated, and you hit the reminder that like you're not in society, or you're not with your family, and you can't care for the ones that you love, or you're concentrating on the things that you've lost in your life, and it does create that numbing feeling, like you just like kind of shut down to it, because it's hard to navigate at all. You know what I mean? And function fully when you just like you're talking about, like depression and things like that come up. And just an immense amount of sadness comes up for a lot of people. But I have been in the community for a long time now, and it's a double-edged sword for me, the holidays. You know what I mean? I do always remember those times, but I also there's also like, I have my son, I have new traditions now and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So 3 Christmases in is much different than 15. You know what I mean? And also re-examining my own stuff, and looking at my own life, and saying like, the holidays can be about building these new traditions. They can be about like getting outside of myself, and not allowing, like you said, like, I think you have, you know what I mean? I was listening to you, man. It's like a pretty similar perspective of a lot of people that come out, where we say, I'm feeling a certain type of way about them. I'm just kind of blah. It brings up a lot, but then also go, oh, it's just another day. And you know what I mean? So it's like either we care about them or we don't. You know what I mean? Like what I'm hearing you saying, a lot of other people is that like I care about them. It's too painful. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I think about the last, if I just look at the last, like, let's say 6 years of my life, specifically around the holidays, I've been home for 3 years and 3 months. And I got out October 21st of 2021. So, like, I got out, like 9 days before Halloween
Mm-hmm.
and a month before, Thanksgiving, 2 months before Christmas and New Year's. And, like, it was a really interesting, like, I got out right as the holiday season was starting. And I remember my first year of like holidays, those first 4 months that I was home was like very overwhelming for me because I wanted so bad to like be in the spirit, but I was also overwhelmed by freedom and like reentry and all the things. And so like I felt like kind of numb my first few holidays out. And then in talking with my family about the holidays and about like me being like at that point, my family had changed during the over a decade I was incarcerated. Certain people that were staples at Christmas weren't alive anymore or weren't around anymore. New people were in the family. I had step siblings now that I had only met a couple of times. I had nephew that like I had, never met my first Christmas. And I felt this horrible anxiety of like Christmas and Thanksgiving where like when I was there, actually all I wanted to do was like run away, because I was having all these feelings come up. And then I go to my second holiday season. It was a little bit better, like it was a little bit better. I was not feeling as anxious, but I was also still feeling weird and kind of like down and gray. Like it's okay. It's December 25th, but like, I had 12 December 25th that I had to like really disassociate myself from and just like kind of shut down. And then now, like you brought up, I was having this conversation with my daughter's mother like a couple months ago. And we were really kind of unpacking like my, lack of enthusiasm about the holidays. And, I told her, I was like, I know that I'll get there because for me now, holidays are associated with like my daughter and seeing the joy on her face, right? And like teaching her about traditions and
Well, that's
starting.
when the things start to change, is when we get out of our own self, right? Like, cause when we're in there and we're literally like stuck in our own, like, I'm losing this thing, you know what I mean? And then even when we get out here and we're rebuilding and stuff, it really wasn't until my son, you know what I mean? I had, started having Christmases with my son and daughter again and stuff, that's when it like really started to change.
Yeah.
Like, that's when it became bearable, I will say. You know what I mean? Like, holidays is still difficult. Well, Christmas is really the one that's a little bit difficult for me. You know what I mean? Like, um, the other ones seem like, but it's like the Christmas season is really the tough one for myself. You know what I mean?
It's interesting too, because I was thinking recently about where a lot of my stuff comes from. And, like I have this one vivid memory from when I was incarcerated of a conversation with my sister where like she was explaining to me that like, holidays just aren't the same, right? Like we used to do really family oriented stuff, like, and like really focus on like our small nuclear family, right? And like, it was a tradition before I went to prison that no matter like kind of like where we were at individually, we could leave all the shit behind and just be together for Christmas and have fun, like always about the food, always about like the games. And, like I was pretty young when we stopped kind of giving gifts, you know what I mean? And we just started really focusing on like what memories can we create around the holidays. And I, have a vivid memory of my sister really explaining like, since you went to prison, it feels very empty. You know what I mean? Like a whole piece of that process is missing. And so I remember my sister kind of telling me that she was out of the holiday spirit too, and just kind of like losing it. And it was like one of those things that I heard and I took, and I didn't let it affect me during the conversation, but it really kind of like sat with me for years and years after. And, when I come home and start having Christmases and all these holidays, I can see what she's talking about, because the people that were important to me, like my grandfather, for instance, passed away while I was in prison. And so now when I go into Christmas, I'm like, man, like, where's like, I miss all those years with Bubba. You know what I'm saying? Like, I miss all those years of just like his laugh, his storytelling, playing cribbage with him and all those things. And it's so for me, it is the same as she went through. It's so much different. And I think I have a lot of guilt associated with that, because when I came home, I think my family maybe was excited about getting back to that. And for me, I was going through what my sister probably went through her first Christmas where I was in prison, and what my dad was going through that first Christmas where I was like, it just doesn't feel the same for me and I'm having a hard time with it. So it was like this weird divide where maybe my family was excited and I was like anxious, and there was like a little bit of a disconnect there. But we've talked about this a handful of times on the podcast. You lose people when you're locked up. Life changes, your family dynamic changes. Who's important to you changes. People come and go in your life. The people that you loved the most, you thought were the most important, sometimes are the people that leave. Sometimes they pass away. Sometimes they stay, but they're distant because there's feelings about you being in prison, whatever the case may be. And so really you're coming home, especially if you've done, any significant time, like a few years, you're coming home and it's like this weird, awkward point where you're like, I'm not even sure how to feel about the holidays, like so much loss has happened, so much change has happened. And then the other thing that really always sits with me too is I have a lot of guilt around the holidays, because my family is so amazing, right? Like, the supported me my whole time in prison, just morally, emotionally supported me. And I remember that they created like a new tradition of like, if it was possible on Christmas, on Thanksgiving, if we had a visit, like Christmas Day, my family would come to visit. And it was something that was like this double-edged sword. It was really special, but I felt really guilty too. Like, I'd go back to my cell and I would be like, what a piece of shit I am, that this is how my family spent their Christmas, getting patted down, getting harassed about their clothes that they're wearing to this visit, and then sitting at a shitty wooden table while somebody watched them and listened to every word. You know what I mean? Like, what a Christmas that is. And they did it for me so that I would feel that family, connection and stuff. I think it's something that I've had a hard time, kind of shaking off over the years, is that guilt that I associate with the holiday season. Um, because I always did feel the love. I always did get cards and letters from people, from friends all across the country that were like, hope you're having a good Christmas. And for me, I loved that. It made me feel included. But then it also brought up the fact that, like, shit, man, like, got myself in this situation and I really let all these people down, and that's like a pretty tough thing to feel in the isolation of a prison cell, and I think it's something that everybody feels to some extent.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, like I said, like, you in the beginning, you were like, I didn't feel nothing. And then, but you were able to, like, now, like, talk about the feelings that you actually felt. And I think that it's this everything for me is a matter of perspective, right? It's like, what was my perspective on that very moment and where am I at now? And so what I tried to do myself is create more experiences and then for my family, then actual gift giving. Like this past year, I went before Christmas. I went out with my family. We went out to Arizona, and me and my son went like kayaking on his birthday, which was like super cool. Which was like close to Christmas, but and then what I mean, like we had this pretty cool experience after we've been through some tough stuff. What I mean, personally, and what I mean, like that now is like part now this year I'm gonna look back and go, man, I was able to see my kid do some stuff that he's never done before, and
Yeah.
I was able to be there for him in a certain way, and every year, it's really about rebuilding, not just building experiences with people, because that's like, to me, the thing, like you're talking about, like your grandfather or whatever, or you know what I mean? Like there's like people that you miss, and it's not the thing. You say, I was like to play cribbage and stuff like that. And if I can now get out of myself and look at myself and say, I have the ability to provide experiences for people.
Right.
But I can't do that. I can't get to that mindset if I'm concentrating on my own pain. You know what I mean?
And a lot of it is forgiveness, right? Like actually forgiving yourself.
Yourself.
And
You
I
have
think
to forgive yourself.
the part that I think we as like, you know, a population, a community struggle with the most. Like we go through the kind of motions of forgiveness. We forgive other people because we know that like that's for us, not for them. You know, we hope that other people forgive us. We work really hard to be worthy of forgiveness. But I think one thing that we forget about in that process is like we actually got to look in the mirror and say, you know, I forgive you too for whatever. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think that's what I hear when you're talking is like,
And I think that process happens a lot when I'm able to be, you know what I mean, with my family without thinking about those other things and
Yeah.
like without getting stuck on that stuff. That's when that healing process really started for me when I look back on it, you know.
yeah,
I can totally relate to not feeling like I fit into the fit. Like I was struggled for a lot of times. Like when I can remember being in the pod with 60 guys in it, whatever it was, and you feel completely alone, right? And then you get out, and it's like you get around your family, and that same feeling
Still feel
is present, right? Like you don't feel like you actually fit in anywhere else, and the perspective shift for me was like I have to, instead of staying stuck, like I have to actually intentionally try to create experience.
Yeah.
And then I can get out of myself in a lot of ways around Christmas time
Yeah.
because I could actually think about the bad Christmases that I've had, or you know, when I was a kid, it was a pretty impactful moment in my life when there was a family situation that happened. My family was connected, like my grandmother. We used to go to my grandmother's house, and there was a big like party, and you know what I mean, and the Christmas Eve, and then something happened, and that all just ended. And I remember like before I even went to prison, like I felt like that's when it started for me. Cause I miss my family on the Christmas Eve, and you know what I mean, like laughing, joking with my cousins, this, that, whatever it was. But and then that's when like Christmases and stuff actually started feeling lonely for me. It wasn't actually about being in prison.
Before, yeah.
It was even before that, like holidays. And for a lot of people that have been impacted by incarceration, typically there's dysfunction that happens first. And like holidays for people that come out of dysfunctional families are typically, it's the same thing, right? Like that same loneliness and pain you're feeling, my family felt, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how did that impact us as people in the family? So it's like a cycle that continues to happen, right? So my job, I feel like right now at this very moment, is to like create the experience, because that's what like changes everything for me. It changes my perspective. It changes how when I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna take, you know, my family on this trip. Well, I get present in that. I feel better about myself. I feel like I'm actually giving something that's going to be the memory, like you're talking about. Like eventually my granddaughter's going to go, oh, I miss that guy because he, you know what I mean? He did that thing. I miss his laugh. You know what I mean? All that same stuff that you're talking about. I'm hoping that somebody says that about me when I'm not around no more. You know what I mean? So like, that's what's it been about for me, but it's been a process to actually get here or with it. You know?
Yeah, that's really beautiful, man, for you to kind of frame like that, like how to reassociate a loss with something that you can gain. And so like to think about the people that we lost that aren't with us anymore, what was special about them that we miss, and how can I become that for somebody else, right? Is like, that's a really powerful way to look at it, a really special thing. And I think, you
Or
know,
we could stay stuck in our stuff and go, oh, I can't, you know what I mean?
oh, I
Like,
miss that person so much every year. I miss
yeah, or like I missed out on all this stuff, and like blah blah blah. It's like how, like if I stay stuck in that, holidays are always going to be hard.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you think about what you know what we value as like a society about like the holiday seasons, it's like all in a lot of ways it's all lost when you go to prison. So I think about even like Thanksgiving, we value like the food, right? And it's like, you know, the food is terrible in the prison. And I remember like I mean, this is the hilarious part about prison. Some people just actually do enjoy a lot of the food. You know what I mean? And so like around Thanksgiving, people are excited, and you see that like they're excited because food matters so much on the outside, and they're excited to have like a special meal even in the prison.
Yeah.
I'm like, I never really liked the food outside, like before prison around Thanksgiving. So I'm definitely not gonna like the prison's version of it, you know. So it was like I gotta disassociate it from that too. But what I hear you saying that's really important is about like creating new things to value and be excited about. And like, you know, I experienced that this year for the first time because even though my daughter at Christmas was just like, you know, right about to turn one, turn one the first week of January. And she doesn't know that it's Christmas and she has no idea what it is, but like going through that process of wrapping her presents and putting them under the tree and, you know, waking up in the morning with her and like showing her how to rip the wrapping paper off and seeing her excitement about just like new shiny things.
Yeah.
For me was like, I did so much healing just in that morning, you know, because it was like, okay, it's not about me. It's about creating the memories and like making something special for the people around me. And like I really that happened with me with my daughter and her mother this year. And I was in Costa Rica for Christmas. So a part of me felt like sad to be away from my people and my family, but then a different part of me felt very happy and fortunate and excited to be there with her family and her people. And of course with my daughter to like, because it's not a memory for my daughter. She's not going to remember her first Christmas, but I am. And then I'm gonna remember her second and her third, and to see that development and that progression too, and to tell her the Christmas stories, and you know, it is for me reassociating Christmas and the holidays with something positive. And I think the lesson that you kind of taught me just in the last few minutes is like, you know, it doesn't have to be a baby or a child. It can be anything. And I also just want to name, because I think this is important for you to talk about like one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years, especially about Recovery Connections of Maine, is that you guys make a serious big effort to make the holidays community inclusive, you know, like to reassociate it with like kind of making it a big deal. And like you always have the big Thanksgiving meals and Christmas meals and the events for the people living in the houses and stuff. And I guess my question is that something that is intentional for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the connection is the most important thing around the holidays. We know it's a tough time of the year, and we know like sometimes people this could be the only nice holiday meal that they get. It could be the only meal that they get that there's not tension and chaos, or you know what I mean. It could be the first time they've been in the community since coming out of incarceration. Like there's a lot of variables, but at the end of the day, man, we always, food is like something that we always, breaking bread together is always something that we do with pretty much any event that we have. There's going to be food involved. You know what I mean? That's just, it feels like a very human thing to do is sit down and eat together and stuff. But, so and that's when I was talking about taking my family on that trip. It was really cool. But like, well, I also like I'm in a new wonderful relationship now, and like we made beef Wellington over the holidays, like which is something that like I didn't even think you could. I don't know if you ever seen a beef Wellington. These things are awesome. They were so good, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's a project though, you know what I mean? To cook one well, and we were able to do that. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do this next time," you know what I mean? And then, you know what I mean? Like, this
Started
is
in the tradition.
yeah, and that is exciting, you know what I'm saying?
Be around.
It's like
Not whatever.
yeah, it's like something that we you know what I mean? It makes things a lot easier, I think, you know what I mean, during the holiday to go, "Okay, what are we gonna do this year?
Yeah.
Like, how is it gonna go for" you know what I mean? Like, um yeah, it's important, man, the connection and the community all throughout the year, and I think one of the things that it's like I know this, like you know, so I was like several months before the holidays. I know holidays are tough for me, so I was like, I got to get into tradition. I got a new Christmas tree. You know what I mean? I put it up kind of relatively early, and I was like, I'm gonna try to be really intentional about it. But like, when I struggle the most, it's like I think we struggle the most when we're not working on ourselves throughout the year, and then you get there, and it's like, bam, everything you've been ignoring all year, and all the guilt, shame you've been carrying around, it becomes magnified during that time of the year. So really, like when I was talking about being intentional about this stuff and like planning trips and stuff like that, I can get caught up in like, you know, my dad died, you know what I mean, several years ago now, but, you know, I have strained relations with my brother, you know what I mean? Like, there's things that go on that, like, that are amplified.
During the holidays, yeah.
And so if I'm not like we talk about, so every group I do, all the time, we go around, we talk about gratitude in the treatment program. And, so, like, when we get to Thanksgiving,
It's already a practice.
they're these guys, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even like you said, like, we have food and we break bread, we do all this stuff, so the Thanksgiving meal isn't actually that big of
Yeah.
it's like, it's just another thing that we're doing, you know what I mean?
Which is actually kind of like ironic, but in a good way, because it's the opposite of what we experienced when we were in prison. It's just another day. It's just another thing that we're doing. It's just the
It
same
is,
old
but, like,
shit, but on the positive side.
and what I'm trying to get at is that, like, if you wait until Christmas to deal with these feelings you have around Christmas, it's gonna be super difficult for you to get through Christmas, you know what I mean? Because it's just gonna come up and it's gonna hit you and all that. But like if I'm working on myself and I remain grateful and like I have like awareness around this stuff throughout the year, I think those holiday seasons become a much easier experience for us. Or the perspective is different. You know what I mean?
It's a really good point, because one of the things that I'm thinking of too on this conversation is like came up for me a little bit this year, and it came up a lot last year, but was like when I was in prison, I remember just sitting there and like hoping that people would like, I hope that all these people send me cards, you know what I mean? Or letters or, and like, just to keep it real with you, like, I hope a couple people send me some money. You know what I'm saying? So like, I could get some, like whatever it was that I needed, new music or, I need some new shoes off the commissary, or I just want to be able to like, gorge with some food, whatever. And I remember like being like, like, man, it would be super nice if a couple people sent me money. And like what you received from people was the connection that you had to them, right? But I also remember putting hundreds of hours into writing my letters around Christmas. So, and even that was kind of a selfish process. I was writing so many letters, I didn't want to be forgotten, and I'm like, I don't have an ability to connect with people unless I really take the initiative.
Yeah.
And so like I like buy a new colored pencil so I could like make bubble letters, like make the letter different than every other letter I sent throughout the year. And it was like, but I really had the strong sense of like, my whole time I was in prison, people supported me, right? Like the love that I felt from my community came from letters and visits and phone calls and, people that sent money or whatever, all the very limited ways you can support somebody in prison. And one of the things that kind of like translated into and manifested into when I came home was this like immense pressure to buy everybody something at Christmas. Like if I don't buy every single person that I share about something at Christmas, I'm failing. And then so it becomes a financial burden. Then it becomes also, I'm just gonna keep it real. I've been home 3 years and change. I still panic every time I go into a grocery store, a retail setting. Any shopping of any kind gives me horrible anxiety. And so then there was that part. I'm like, I don't really have the money to get everybody a
So we
gift.
shut down.
Yeah, I don't know what to get anybody, and I don't want to go into a store. So I just, like, what do I do? And then I felt like my first couple of years, like I felt like a failure, like, I'm like, I got to get every Facebook friend a gift. Like I got like 3,000 Facebook friends. I don't even know 1,000 of them.
You know what's wild is I don't think you got me a gift, dude. It's fucking.
Don't activate my fear right now, man. This is my boy. Is that this really weird thing that happened to me is I felt this crazy guilt and shame
Yeah.
about how to choose.
This is what I'm saying though, is that like there's something that we gotta take care of leading up to that
100%.
in order to like get through it in a healthy way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like recognizing, and this is why, talking about 3 years out, I've been out for that. Like I understand what you're saying because you really want, what I mean? It's really a time when we want to be included the most of the year. You know what I mean?
And it's what you said it earlier, and this is why I told that story about like my fear of like, what if I didn't get somebody that's really important to me a gift and they take it personally, right? But what you said earlier that really brought that up for me, and because it resonated, is what we have to reassociate the holidays with something new. And for you and the program, right, especially Archon, and for you in your personal life too. And for me, it's something I'm just getting into, like I'm starting to understand this and kind of like utilize it. It's like I gotta stop associating holidays with material, right? Material value. What can you offer somebody? How can you show up for some, and really start associating holidays with gratitude and associating holidays with presence with a C instead of presence with a T, right? Like, how can I just be present for the people that I love? It's sometimes the holidays are about just that little message, that text message, that Facebook message that you send somebody to say, hey, you're important to me. I might not be able to see you and spend time with you, but I love you. I hope you have a good day. Like, it's the connection. And we talk about it all the time, right? It's the foundation for the recovery connections of Maine, is reassociating the holidays to something that makes you feel connected to something greater, to something that you are grateful for, is really what I'm starting to see is the way to kind of get out of that mundane holiday existence through prison, where it's every day is the same. The Christmas might be on a Thursday, but it's the exact same as last Thursday. It's going to be the exact same as next Thursday. And, so like 2-part process. Number one, healing through the guilt and the shame of being away during holidays is super important. And then reassociating, reconnecting the holidays and freedom to something kind of bigger than yourself, and like expressing gratitude, not just on Christmas, but like finding the things to be grateful for every day will make that gratitude on Christmas a lot easier to find, right?
Well, I think, Christmas is a time, the ghost of Christmas past, or the ghost, like, I think, like, ghosts come up during their holiday season, and, like, if we don't acknowledge that ghost in August, just like we do in December, that it's gonna feel much more intense. It's gonna feel like all that stuff comes up at one time.
Because it's
Well,
not
like,
actually about Christmas. It's about the ghosts that exist.
it's about the
365
grief
days
and the
a year.
loss and what Christmas represents to us as a society, right? And like what that means, and the family and the cocoa around the fire. It's like those things are unattainable for some people's family. Like those things are not realistic for the kid that like spent every kid and every Christmas for 8 years, and like say a different foster home growing up.
Yeah.
Like that Christmas is gonna look different for that kid.
Sure.
And so like when we have an image of what Christmas is supposed to be on the Hallmark card, and like the way that is, like that's the image that's drilled into people's heads, right?
Or the TikTok or the Instagram.
But like, what about the kid that like doesn't get Christmas presents, but they have to go to school with kids that do, and they're embarrassed about that their whole lives. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how does Christmas land with that kid, right? And all these issues are present before you go to prison, right? This is what I was talking about. The dysfunction happens before we go to prison, and so how can you live up to that in your mind if you go like you're saying, like I got to do this, I got to do that, blah blah blah, because that's the Hallmark postcard version of Christmas. You know what I mean? And so now, like I said, like what I had to come to accept is that that's my reality and everybody else's reality around this particular holiday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like now I go down like on Thanksgiving. For the past several years, I like deep fried turkeys at our recovery house, and I, catch up with my mom over Saturday, and that's our tradition now. Every year, it's the same thing. I don't have a big Thanksgiving dinner with my family on Thanksgiving anymore.
Yeah.
It's not the same. But when I was a kid, I used to watch the Macy's Day Parade with my grandmother. You know what I mean? While she's drinking her coffee. You know what I mean? Like that's what I remember Thanksgiving at back then. But like, I can dwell on that loss. I can dwell on all that stuff, but like, is that actually gonna make me feel good about myself? And when I'm dwelling on loss and when I'm dwelling on that stuff, it's because I'm not taking care of myself. That's how I got there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that's really, for everybody listening, like if you're somebody who can like really identify with what we're talking about because you've been through it, or if you're somebody who's like, man, I have a loved one, somebody I care about that I can see kind of start to distance and disassociate during the holidays, what you just said matters so much. Like, stop making it about the holidays and start making it for yourself or for your loved one about like, what are we doing the other 364 days or 350 days, whatever holidays it is that you value, because it might not be Christmas, it might not be Thanksgiving, it might be something completely different that we're not talking about today. Whatever that day for you is, if you didn't take the other 364 days of the year to definitely do some of that work and love yourself and forgive yourself and confront the shame, and if you are the loved one of that person and you didn't encourage them and help them, to do that work, then it's going to continue to be a very tough time of year, right? When those important days come around. And so, like I said, it could be any day. We're talking about holidays specifically because, we just kind of got out of the holiday season, but it could be an anniversary date, somebody's birthday. It could be, any significant date of the year for you or somebody else. That's when the shit comes up. And so that's really, I think, what has been really helpful for me about this conversation, because it's become very evident. And it's a reminder for me too. I got to spend the whole year finding those little pockets of healing as much as possible, right? Finding the way to express the gratitude, finding the way to release the shame, finding the way to confront the ghosts of Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's, Halloween, birthday past, and just say, it's okay. That's not my life anymore. This is, and I have an opportunity to do something.
So I think it's important too. Is that like I just want to point out that when we started talking about this, you were like, I didn't feel anything. I don't feel anything. But like as we've been unpacking it,
Realizing all the things that
there's like you felt a tremendous. See, there's like a tremendous amount of feeling that's involved. But like we as men, sometimes we'll go like, I'm not talking. Like I actually didn't feel shit. And I don't think that's exclusive to men, but like I think when you're in an all male prison for all those years, we learn to go, I'm not, like it just doesn't come out. It doesn't, and we process it as we're not feeling anything, because when I unleash this, you're gonna look at me like a little bitch if you think that like you know what I mean? Like honestly, like when you think about it that way, it's like, we do at times process that. We're too tough to talk about the things that are really going on for us.
Or too scared.
Too scared, whatever it is.
It's very both most of the time.
Right? But usually when we're scared, we act tough. You know what I mean? So it's like we gotta learn how to like acknowledge that. Like this is painful.
Yeah, it's like so funny to hear you say that, because like I can think of like just so many people, a handful of people, right? Maybe a bucket full of people that around Christmas will like the exact words they'll say to them, man, I don't give a fuck about Christmas.
You fuck, man.
Care about no Christmas.
Nah, actually, we
I don't give a fuck about no Thanksgiving.
Actually, we do. We want to cuddle up with a warm blanket with the hot cocoa and like mama.
What you just said is so accurate. It's not you don't give it's fear.
Oh,
and that's why we kind of present that way, like Christmas. Like, I don't, like, fuck Christmas. I don't care. And it's like, we've talked about this before a couple times. That's the wounded inner child, right? That presenting as this, like, don't care, tough mentality. Like, Christmas doesn't mean shit to me, even though it means something to, like, so much of the world, but I'm too tough. But really, it's that I'm too hurt, right? And I'm too scared, and I'm too fearful to confront it. So, I mean, man, as always, it's been a great conversation, and I hope for everybody listening that something resonated with you. And I'll tell you, if it didn't, just tune into the next episode, and I promise you'll find it there.
And like on this topic, man, like really try to do that. Like start working on the Christmas of 25 in January of 25, and get yourself ready for it now. You know what I mean? Like start doing the work and maintain that attitude of gratitude, and things become a little easier.
Yeah. And as always, another episode of Behind the Door, man. Thank you, Jeremy, for bringing me on my healing journey. Knuckles.